Erraught, who has quite a career she's going to tell us about. But first, I'll just say that my name is Thomas Bellew. I'm the head of the public diplomacy here at the embassy. With my colleague Elias Benmana, we present a variety of different speakers on Irish people usually, making it in Germany, making it in Berlin. And traditionally, it has always been making it in Berlin. But today, for the very first time, we have reaching out in this digital age, and where we are reaching out to hear from Tara Erraught, who is making it in Germany and beyond. Tara will tell us about her life and career as an international opera singer, a mezzo-soprano, her repertoire of Rossini, Mozart, Strauss, Bellini, Dvorak, how she got trained up in the Royal Irish Academy, moved to Germany about 13 years ago, I believe, and her recent launch of an album, The Trials of Tenducci, I think. And yep. Tara, you are very welcome. And I'd just like to say also that the ambassador would like to again extend his very good wishes and to thank you for participating today. It's a real honor for us, it genuinely is. And unfortunately, he's dismayed that he couldn't participate and to hear you. But as I pointed out to people, we are going to record this session. And we'll be delighted to hear from you. And when people want to ask questions, we'll wait at the end. People can put their hands up physically, waving, or they can put their hands up digitally in the chat function in the system here. So Tara, again, you're very, very welcome. We would very much look forward to hearing what you have to say. And I'm sure you have an interesting story that a lot of people will be very keen to hear. Please take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I've put together a very small presentation, okay, with limited amount of details that I can expand on, and feel free at any time to ask a question. But I thought I would start it just kind of explaining where I come from and how I got into the singing. So if you excuse me for 1 second, and I will share my screen. There we go. Now, can we see that? I presume we can. Here we go. So, life on and off of stage. This is an incredible, lucky thing to even be able to say. This is a very special view to me. This is my view from the stage into the Bavarian State Opera, which has been my home really for the last 13 years, and where I kind of did my musical growing up, so to speak. I started singing lessons at 9 years old with an incredible teacher in Dundalk called Geraldine McGee. Dundalk and County Louth, which is the smallest county in Ireland, has a huge tradition of music. So going for singing lessons was like a rite of passage. It was something you simply had to do if you could sing in County Louth. We have a tradition in Ireland of a thing called Feis Ceoil. It's competitions that are organised all over the country, an incredible experience for any young musician, offering performance experience, exposure to your peers, insight into audience expectations. And realistically, what I've learned now is that that was my earliest audition training. It was incredible. I used to do the Feis in Newry, Warrenpoint, Ballymena, Portadown, Dublin, Sligo, and Navan. I loved them, and they were just so brilliant. They were so wonderful in forming my abilities to perform. Transitioning from Geraldine McGee, my teacher in Dundalk, to study with Dr. Veronica Dunn at the Royal Irish Academy of Music around the age of 17 for my third level studies was really a decision to focus on technical work. That, of course, in itself was a career-defining move to study with what we all know as the granddad of Irish opera. Ronnie is an incredible, incredible woman. These are pictures of my career in the Feis. Guys, at the Feis, there were competitions from folk songs, lieder, art songs, songs in shows, light opera, all sorts of things. My first win there was I was about 11, and that would have been the under 12s. And each year I got more of the bug and started to participate in more of the competitions. And honestly, I know it's contradictory to say when you look at these pictures, it was not always about the winning, but I was addicted to performing. And by the top picture there was at 16, I knew that this was absolutely for me. It was what I had to do. And it was an incredible experience to have the feis, to try out and hone my performing skills. These are the two biggest, most important ladies in my life, both of my singing teachers. There is no great singer out there that doesn't have a great singing teacher, or two, if not three at times. The top is Geraldine McGee in Dundalk, and the bottom picture here is Veronica Dunn. Both had careers of their own, Ronnie internationally, and two women that I still sing for, that I still send audio clips no matter where I am in the world. It's like making sure you go back to the mechanic with your good car. From Dublin to Munich, for me, the biggest and most important step of my career, no question. Thanks to my feis experience, I was prepared when the opportunity came to enter Ireland's only international singing competition, the VDISC, aged 20. Now, being only a second year undergraduate, it was thought slightly foolish to even enter. How would you have the repertoire, the experience, was the voice ready? But from the first day I went to college, I worked harder than I thought was possible. And together with Ronnie, we really worked hard on technique. And then we started to study repertoire, but age appropriate repertoire, meaning that I had to do a lot also of research to find smaller roles in the operas and roles of young boys and of children, because as a mezzo-soprano, much of the lighter music was going to be with these characters, so young boys. I entered the competition and luckily for me got through all the rounds into the final. And then I came second, which was outrageously wonderful. I also won the Dermot Troy Prize for the Best Irish Singer. This gave me so many work offers and international recognition, meaning that I didn't have to audition any longer to get into international competitions, but I'd simply jump into the second round. This was a massive bonus, because a huge amount of students' time and money goes into entering international competitions. And sending off audition tapes and all these kind of things, which I now no longer have to do. So I entered the Hans Gabor Belvedere competition in Vienna that summer, luckily made it to the finals, and I met the management from the Bayerische Staatsoper in Munich. They invited me to come to Munich the following week to audition, which luckily for me was a success. Once we spoke with my teacher and ironed out the details of how I could finish my degree while also being in the opera studio, that was it. I was off to Munich. Incredible. So many people had to help us make that possible at the Royal Irish Academy of Music and also at the Opera House, where they agreed in periods of time where I would be allowed to travel home for exams, or that we could get examiners to travel to Munich to examine me on things. I joined the International Opera Studio of the Bavarian State Opera. It was 2 incredible years. I have never worked harder in my entire life than in those 2 years. An opera studio is really a formative time where you learn about the industry, you polish your performance techniques, and you learn stagecraft. Coming to Germany, the most important thing was that we learned to act. The German Regie Theater is so important in our industry. And when I say Regie Theater, generally that means that you have to be able to improvise. And in turn, the same as you have your vocal technique, you need then also an acting technique. And we got all of that at the Opera Studio in Munich. Following 2 years as a member of the Opera Studio, I was offered a full-time resident principal soloist position at the Bayerische Staatsoper, also known as a Fest ensemble position. The first year of this contract offered me 2 incredible role debuts, which were Cherubino in Le Nozze di Figaro and the title role in L'Enfant et le Sortilège, so the child. Plus, as luck would have it, I was offered a jump-in opportunity that changed the speed and trajectory of my career. So an absolute pinpoint in the kind of launch, for want of a better word, of my career. At 5 days' notice, I learned a new role from scratch, filling in for an ailing colleague. The role of Romeo in I Capuletti e Montecchi in a premiere production by Vincent Bussard with the designer Christian Lacroix was totally new to me. I had never even listened to the whole opera, never mind study the role. It was absolutely outside of my usual repertoire. And although massively risky, as with any business, often the biggest risk reaps the biggest reward. Luckily for me, the first phone call I made was to Ronnie or Veronica. And she said, well, Lovey, you know, you're quite young, but you can do it. Don't push. You can do it. It'll be a young Romeo. And as most people, the second call was to my mom, and she swiftly flew to Munich. The pictures on the left were the Romeo in Capuletti e Montecchi. All I have left of the run of those shows are these pictures because I don't really remember it. It was like an out-of-body experience. If somebody played the music on the piano, I could sing it, and it's muscle memory, but I really don't remember it. It was an incredible but out-of-body experience. The top picture on the right was the last curtain call for my Cherubino in Le Notte di Figaro, and the beautiful green school uniform down below that, and the red wig was the L'Enfant in L'Enfant les Sortilèges. This first year of my time in the ensemble was so incredible. I met my manager. I had so much stage experience, both planned and extra. And obviously with the Capuletti, it put me on the map, really. And without auditioning, most theatres all of a sudden had heard of me. And I was very lucky at that time that I had a management team and my teacher team, and they all spoke with each other as well as with me. And that's really important in a young singer's career. The following 10 years consisted of 47 other role debuts at the Bayerische Staatsoper as part of the ensemble. And when I wasn't needed in Munich, I had time to make guest appearances on other main stages across the world. Luckily for me, some of the house debuts include the Vienna State Opera, Hamburg State Opera, Berlin State Opera, Theater an der Wien, Washington National Opera, Metropolitan Opera, and Irish National Opera. All of these opportunities allowed me to repeat roles I had already debuted. It gave me the space to build a reputation as a Rossini and Mozart singer, with my signature roles including La Cenerentola and Rosina in Il Barbiere di Sevilla. I've performed both of these roles now more than 40 times, which is such a luxury, because when you know a role like that, you turn up and it's like you're introducing your old friend. And the voice, it's all muscle memory, the body knows what it's doing, and it's a beautiful, relaxed thing to get to do. I mean, it's an absolute joy. I have been so blessed to work in a theatre like the Bayerische Staatsoper and to have been taken in at 21, which was also for them quite a risk to take somebody as young. And I have to say, it has not gone unnoted. The work that we put in and the community work also with the young people. And in 2011, I was awarded the Münchner Festspiel Prize. So that's an audience prize. And I have to say the award that I was given for that was a monetary award, and I was able to take that money and then go on a European-wide audition tour, the one and only audition tour I've ever had to do. So realistically, the people from Munich funded that, and that was really formative. And then in 2013, I had the unbelievable honor of being awarded the Pro Meritus Siente e Liturium. And this was a Bavarian government award for my contribution to the arts. This still astounds me, really. For me, what I do is it's just such a pleasure, and it's amazing to have been able to make a career out of something that I love so much. So to get an award like this is really, it's just such a huge honor, and it really made me feel like not only was I part of the family of the Bavarian State Opera, but also wider in the whole community, like I had been taken in, and I'm now one of theirs, which is really a wonderful feeling. One of the main dreams and goals I had from the day I started my undergraduate degree was to get to perform at home in Ireland. When I moved to Munich in 2008, it just wasn't a possibility. We had one opera festival in Wexford where they do an incredible job. so much so that they really hire very established singers, and this field quite outside of my reach. They also do a repertoire that's not so well known, so technically I also wouldn't have been ready to work with them. So there just was no possibility to be in an opera because Opera Ireland had gone and we had no full-time opera company. I worked alongside an incredible team that was originally called Wide Open Opera. And in 2016, I finally made my Irish opera debut at the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre in Rossini's Il Barbiere di Sevilla. This ignited a fire in me that it's still burning bright, that I want to help promote opera in Ireland and continue what has been a long-standing legacy of opera in Ireland. So much so that I recently released an album with the Irish Baroque Orchestra called The Trials of Tenducci, where we celebrate the Italian castrato Tenducci, who came to Ireland to sing and to teach. And he was here in the 1760s, and opera was booming in Ireland. Dublin and Cork were absolute cultural hubs at the time. This was the billboard that they hung in Dublin when we prepared to do the Barber of Seville. This was massive. I mean, this was such a huge feat for the company to take on, because you cannot go abroad and learn as much as I had learned and not bring every inch of that home. So we were quite demanding, and we pushed ourselves in what we wanted to produce for the people in Ireland and make sure that it was a production that you could also see, you know, standing on the stage in Vienna or Berlin or Munich or Hamburg, Frankfurt, that we were giving back every single thing that we had learned. After we finished The Barber of Seville, I was delighted to be asked to be one of the founding artistic advisors of Irish National Opera, which launched as a full-time national opera company in 2018. This was years and years of work and speaking with the government and making sure that the campaign to keep opera alive in Ireland was listened to. Luckily for us, the government absolutely stood behind it, and through the funding of the Arts Council, the company is fully governmental funded, which is an incredible thing to be able to say. Starring in the inaugural production from INO in a run of Mozart's Le Nozze di Figaro, where I changed roles from Cherubino to Susanna, we did this at the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. I got then to sing the same role my own teacher, Veronica, done, the role she sang on the same stage with DGO, which was Dublin Grand Opera, many years before. Again, continuing the legacy that we spoke about. I'm now a proud member of the board of directors of Irish National Opera Company that not only performs in Dublin, but tours all around the entire island of Ireland. If there's one thing I have learned from watching and speaking to the audience all over Germany is that in every small town, there's a theatre where you're able to go as a young family, where you're able to turn up and immerse yourself in the art form. And for me, this was just incredible because it wasn't available in the country that I grew up in, and I really want to change that. And I want to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, not that you have to come to the main city or the capital city or even just a big town, but that we will bring it to you. And that's definitely something I learned in Germany. These were some of the shots from this Marriage of Figaro Nozze. Again, I was very lucky to have gotten to do this production in Munich, a beautiful production. And I wanted to be able to bring that same niveau home. And we worked really, really hard to produce that. Bringing Cenerentola to Dublin. Okay, the title role in Rossini's La Cenerentola, or Cinderella, has become one of my signature roles. I was immensely proud to bring this role to Ireland 4 months prior to my scheduled performances of the same opera at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York last March. This is a role I had already sung in the biggest houses in Europe, including Bayerische Staatsoper, Hamburg State Opera, and Vienna State Opera. It was dreamy. We mounted a spectacular fairy tale Irish production directed by the wonderful Irish director Orpha Phelan at the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre in Dublin, with a predominantly Irish cast and crew, which is also for a country as small as Ireland, a beautiful thing to be able to do. All of the sets, all of the costumes, the entire chorus and most of the cast, the whole orchestra, all Irish. Amazing. Irish National Opera came through again with an amazing home soil opportunity, not just for me, but for the younger generation of singers coming up behind me, that we were able to offer cover roles, understudies, they were able to be in the chorus. And we rehearsed it as you would rehearse anywhere else in the world. So we have created something really beautiful. It's a very young company, but it is striving. It was also the top picture on the right, also my first time being with my big picture on the side of a bus. Incredible. So here are just some production pictures. The amazing thing is every one of these sets were made in Ireland, all by Irish carpenters. And the fact that we were able to bring so much employment with one production was also a beautiful thing. And it's one of the things that we strive to do, is to make sure that we can employ as many Irish people as possible within our industry. Now, Thomas mentioned this a little earlier. Cenerentola at the Metropolitan, the dream that almost came through. So close. On March 12th, 2020, we had completed all of the rehearsals, including the dress rehearsal, and we were ready to open the show. Opening day arrived, and at 12:45, at 12:45, I received the call telling me that they had decided to close the house, cancel the entire run of shows, and that I should leave the country as soon as was physically possible. Oh, this contract had been signed 5 years before that. It was, I know everyone was in a tough situation at the start of this whole COVID thing, but this was a shock. This was a shock to the system. So, as you do, I gathered myself and I came home. The most important thing, and I've been asked this quite often recently, the most important thing for any young artist to remember is that above all else, this is an industry, it's a business. And as such, you have to commit to also investing time and energy in business meetings and industry research. That said, when COVID hit, we all were given an amazing opportunity to take a little step back and say, okay, what is missing? What could we improve? Not just yourself vocally or technically, but within the industry. And COVID gave us this kind of pause button opportunity to really assess that. And that was what I decided to concentrate on when all of these lockdowns happened. I conduct meetings both on my own behalf, along with my management team, of course, and also on behalf of Irish National Opera, in order to be able to report back to the board or the executive on industry findings that may be beneficial to the company, both structurally and artistically. Because we have quite a new company in Ireland, it's still flexible, and we're still able to change also structural things, which is quite wonderful that we're able to mold this from the ground and find what works best for the community here. However, right, we cater always for the public, because at the end of the day, people come to the opera to be entertained, to feel something, to be carried away with the story and music for a little while. We offer a service in that sense. Irish people are said to be natural storytellers. Thus, the reason we have so many Irish opera singers on the circuit. I mean, I cannot name how many Irish opera singers are working in Germany, all over the place. I mean, it's incredible. And I also didn't realize that till I went to live abroad. And I think it's massively important that we continue to invest in the good teaching, obviously, that we continue to invest in the Irish-German relations. A beautiful thing at the moment is that a lot of the opera studios in Germany will come and audition now in Dublin, so as that the singers don't even have to come the whole way to whatever city they're auditioning in Germany, because we now have a reputation of good technical base, and of course, naturally, genetically interesting instruments to start with. The Irish and the Welsh people have that. But the one thing that the Irish people have, and most of us have from birth, is the ability to tell a story. And so, yes, that's really what we took. Not just me, I feel it's what the entire industry took from COVID, and from the COVID period. We've had an opportunity to reassess and to reevaluate what we're offering, which I think can only be a good thing. We certainly can't look at it as a bad thing. I have been very lucky that I have had performance opportunities throughout, mainly at the Bayerische Staatsoper. We did a run of Così fan tutte from Mozart in September, and we filmed and live streamed performances of Hansel and Gretel in December, which is always for me dreamy. I love that role. I sing Hansel, and it's a joy. Yes, I hope you can join us sometime at INO to hear all of these incredible Irish artists we have. The most wonderful thing that I'm able to say now is that because of the relationships we've set up with most of the theatres in Germany, it has become quite an Irish-German company also in Ireland, because when we can't fill a role from the roster of Irish singers, for example, when we did Cenerentola in Dublin, we didn't have anybody to sing Alidoro, so the fairy godfather, and we had a wonderful, wonderful bass come from the Staatsoper in Berlin. And because of that relationship that we had built up, we were able to get him like an Urlaubschein and make sure that it was all above board that he could come. And I hope we can continue then to build these relationships with the theatres. They have also been incredibly kind, I'll say, in Munich. When we started the company first, and I would have meetings with the casting director and the intendant to ask advice on how we should mold things or shape things, and they were so giving with their time and information. So I really hope we can continue to build those relationships, and INO should strive to even higher things. Yeah, here's hoping. So I am going to turn this off and come back to you, stop this, and ask, has anybody any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Tara. That was both fascinating and very, very interesting and comprehensive. I would say that a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I would ask again that if you do, just put your hands up, physically wave them, or you can raise them digitally. But a question that I would ask, Tara, if I may, just
Yeah.
there, you mentioned the VDISC. I don't know what those letters stand for. Maybe you can tell us. But also, you said when you won, you were, was it only 20? And
Yeah.
you thought you were quite young. So it struck me then. I said, what is the typical sort of lifespan? You know, the way we talk about professional footballers have a lifespan of maybe 10, 15 years, maybe 20 if they're very lucky. What's the lifespan of someone who's performing at the highest level in the opera circuit? What's the expectation?
Well, it's an excellent question. So the thing is, so much of it depends on the individual person. Obviously, the vocal cords develop at different times. Also, not just between men and women, but on voice type. Your vocal cords are like this long, from one knuckle to another. They are tiny, and that's all you have. So we have to depend and wait for those muscles to grow. And so even though I might say, well, for a mezzo, a high coloratura mezzo like myself, sure, you can start professionally, let's say at 25, and hopefully sing right through to 65. But it could be different for every person. The slowest moving is always the male bass voice, because it just takes longer for that muscle to develop. So they tend to start also a good deal later. For the women, the lighter the voice, the earlier they can start to sing on the big stages. When you have somebody that sings a lot of Wagner, for example, that's a whole other animal. And what they do is like a marathon every show. And so they will come in and they will rehearse. Their chords also generally are thicker and musclier. And they tend to come in and rehearse whatever period of time, do their shows. There'd be a couple of days off between shows because, first of all, they're so much longer and it's heavy, heavy singing. And then you find that they have a period maybe of 3 weeks off or 2 weeks off. And I mean, for me, that's mind-blowing, because I dovetail contracts all the time. So once shows start here, I'll start to rehearse in the next place, and I'd be doing 2 things at once pre-COVID. So it's slightly different depending on your voice type. The men tend to sing a lot longer than the women, and that's a hormonal thing. So it all depends on what happens to the instrument with menopause. And that's being studied quite a lot actually now. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops. The most important thing is, though, is that you or in your brain, you never actually decide what's right. It's always the muscles. And so if the voice isn't feeling great in your favorite repertoire anymore, you have to move on. And if you're willing to do that and grow with the instrument, then the longevity could go much, much further. And, you know, like certainly when I was studying and people spoke about mezzos, and they'd say, well, you get to a certain age and then all that's left are witches and bitches. And I remember thinking, oh, like I am somebody who can definitely do comedy, or I can do kind of tragedy, but I am not a great witch. And I haven't learned the bitchy thing yet. I'll get there. But I was thinking, okay, I'll have to research. So I have been researching repertoire, and there's so much stuff. But luckily for me, the voice hasn't gone in that direction. And even though I'm kind of starting now to stop singing the very young children like Cherubino and Hansel, now I'm finding younger women, which is great. So it all just depends. It really depends. But there's really no reason you would have to stop, you know, in your 50s, unless the hormones go absolutely wild. Oh, and the VDISC, the Veronica Dunn International Singing Competition. So in Ireland, we used to have the RTE Young Musician, and then that kind of fizzled out. And yeah, Ronnie tried to make this platform. And so it's, yeah, outside of Cardiff, it's one of the biggest competitions this end of Europe. And it happens in the National Concert Hall in Dublin with the National Symphony Orchestra.
Thank you. Now I know what the Veronica Dunn International Singing Competition is. Thank you, and thanks for the things on the insights on the length of your vocal cords. I can imagine there's lots of honey and lemon and hot water consumed, or maybe not, and you stay away from air conditioning unit. Can I open it to the floor if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask or to put? Yeah, Joanne, by all means.
Hi. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Tara. Tara, as you know, Leo and myself are based in Munich, and we follow you. And the last time I saw you was in person, was in your role in Hansel and Gretel, just December 2019, I think. Mm-hmm. And then I see you online before Christmas. You and Barbara were doing.
Yes.
Yeah, which was lovely, absolutely lovely. And so I don't have any questions. I'm fascinated about that last piece about the longevity or otherwise, how long you can keep going, and all the other colleagues. We know Dean very well, of course. Dean.
Yes.
So we feel very blessed in Munich with so many wonderful opera singers being based here. And yeah, with all the downsides of COVID, it's also meant that we've been exposed to, I think you did something in Wicklow or in Dublin some months ago. So I listened to that as well. So that's given the world an opportunity to hear you without ever having to leave our kitchen, which is not great for you in terms of income. But on the other hand, it's promoted what you do. And
excellent.
Promoted to different audiences. And I tell everybody, just listen and see how wonderful she is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we really know it's been so tough for you guys financially during this time. So hopefully with the vaccine and when all that happens, that you're back on the road again.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
it.
I
followed your story when you heard the news in New York. Yeah, and how you just got on a plane and went home devastated.
Yeah, but the entire world was in the same boat, yes, which I think was the first time for all of us. I mean, there's never been a situation where, even with war, it's only been a few countries at a time. This took over the entire world. So obviously we just have to pick up and keep going however we can. What I found amazing was how people need art, and people begged for art in whatever form you could get it out to them. Although I do a huge amount of opera, you know, I spend a massive amount of my year in recital. Also living in Germany, that was really important because there's so much Lieder. And I study in Germany. I mean, I'm so lucky, with Brigitte Fassbender, who is one of Germany's most famous mezzos. I had every album. I nearly died of fright when I met her in the corridor, but couldn't let her pass without asking. And we've been 6.5, maybe 7 years working together now. And so I spend much more time with leaders since working with her. And at least with recital, currently they're safe. It's only one singer, one pianist. It's easy to rehearse because you have the breath of the piano between you. And even though there's no public, which is soul destroying, it's something, because mounting an opera at the moment is next to near impossible. And the one thing you have to consider, like even in Munich now, they stream, but they've had to take out the first 8 rows of the auditorium, cover in the orchestra pit, space out the orchestra so the singers can't hear them. They can't hear each other. And it's this whole kind of, it's not uncomfortable. It's still amazing to get to do something, but it's really very new and very risky to be putting out things that are very different from what we're used to. But you certainly couldn't ask 50 or 60 people to squeeze into an orchestra pit at the moment. I wouldn't do it myself. So you'd feel wrong to ask somebody to do it.
And that's a huge pit in Munich. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I meant Angela when I
yes.
Yeah, so I met her a couple of weeks ago at St. Patrick's Day event.
Very good.
So it's good to see her.
That's good.
Thanks, Joanne. We have a question there from Patrick Riley, has his hand up. Patrick, if you'd like to come in there.
Thanks, Thomas. Tara, thank you so much for that. It was fascinating to get that overview and to get a sense of, it isn't just a question of doing a few rehearsals and turning up on the night, but that bit behind, which I think, you know, for real sort of plebs like myself, I don't get any sense of just how much, as you said, the research bit, I didn't say nothing obviously of the training bit that has to go in. So really, really interesting. Thanks so much. 2 quick questions, if I may. At which point did you realize that you wanted to go down the road with opera as the form of singing that you were going to do, and what was the kind of thought process behind that? Because presumably, you know, with this talent, you could have gone in several different directions, but this was the one that you decided to go with. So that's the first one. And second one, at the other end of the musical scale, do you have any particular preferred kind of pop music genre, or do you have, has there been any sort of, from that genre, that has maybe perhaps influenced you in any particular way? Because it makes the rest of us feel a little bit more okay when we realize that the experts are also interested in the same thing as we are. Thanks.
That's gas. So first of all, I had started singing quite young, and with folk songs, a lot of Moors melodies, a lot of what we might now consider as very Republican songs. They were just traditional things at the time. But I could feel very quickly the effect they were having on the people around me, especially my grandparents. I didn't understand it, I don't think, but I could see how they were affected by it. And it was like this, not this power, but it was like a super hug that you could give them without touching them. And I knew there was something special in that. But at 13, my parents took us as part of our summer holiday to Arena di Verona, and we seen Aida. Aida's piece I wouldn't sing, I barely sit through if I was there now. But the spectacle of it and seeing all of those people enthralled. And I think what actually got me was the unbelievable sound from the chorus in this theme that I knew. And I didn't know if I knew the music off the radio or from a movie or how I knew it, but I thought, oh my God, this is even bigger than the wee concerts, and I need to learn more. So I started then to listen. I mean, YouTube wasn't really, I mean, we didn't have internet when I was that age. It was only, all of that was only starting. And so my dad bought me what do you even call it? What's the word for it? Like I'm going to call it a prescription. That's the wrong word. Subscription. To an opera magazine where each month you'd get a little synopsis book and a DVD. And I'd watch, now I wouldn't sit through and watch all of it, like I'd be going for the big numbers. And bit by bit I got really hooked. And from about 15 then, Geraldine used to let me sing things. She'd let me sing them in English, first of all. and with a very innocent kind of sound. So I never learned to push. But I was addicted really from 13. I knew there was something bigger. And once, oh God, once I got to the FES, Keole in Dublin, certainly, where you would have seen third level students from the academy or DIT, and they do whole scenes. And I was like, Jesus, when am I ever going to get to college? Till I get to do one of them. So it just kind of, it bit me. I do still like song singing and recitals, and I do a lot of that. And it's a dying art form. It's so difficult to persuade promoters to do them instead of have you with orchestra, but it's something we fight a lot for. When I was growing up, there was a huge amount of Neil Diamond in our house, like massive, and I knew every word of every song. That's one of the reasons I was brought for singing lessons, so I could learn something appropriate. Any hit from the 60s, you name it, I knew it, because that was what they played. I have a very big weakness for Tina Turner and Adele. I mean, I listen to all sorts of things. If I'm at home, one of the big playlists there'd also be Frank Sinatra, obviously, and Ella Fitzgerald. I have massive graw for Adele, I have to say. And interestingly, she has some vocal problems a couple of years ago, and went to an ENT that I know quite well, for her work, and is only now, over the past 18 months, learning a proper technique. And the difference that has made and will make to her stamina when she eventually does go back out on the road is incredible. The fundamentals of what we do are the same. She would have an extra technique in learning how to sing in a microphone. I do not know how to do that. And that is an art, honestly, to not make it boom and all sorts of things. For me, it just, I can't explain except this mega magic hug, this musical hug I could give people, and I could only find in this kind of music. And I wasn't finding it in pop songs or even the old hits that I knew. It wasn't the same. It was the stories that were in these songs that I was able to like wrap the people up. And so it just brought me there. It automatically brought me there. And I find that really is the way then with concert work, especially. Regardless if you're in Dublin, in Munich, in Tokyo, or New York, it's the same, and you can do that with people. And I didn't find that in any other repertoire. So I think that's probably what brought me and kept me in the classical kind of spectrum of it. But I'd listen to anything, absolutely anything.
Some good recommendations there, Tara. Thanks very much. Is there anybody else on the floor who's got a question? Because I have another question that I'd like to put, but if anybody else would like first, want to raise your hand? Yvonne, you had your hand up there, and then we'll take Elias after that. Yvonne?
Yeah, can I just ask, thank you very much. It was so interesting to hear your insights, and I can only imagine how you felt in New York, suddenly having to not do the thing you thought you're going to be doing. It sounds horrendous. But how do you look after your voice? That's kind of something that occurred to me.
Sure. So, okay, pre-COVID, I was a big mask wearer anyway. And people used to think I was crazy between the mask and the hand sanitizer. But if I get a cold, I can sing through it, because that's what my technique is for, okay? If that cold falls to my lungs, that's when I get in trouble. And so it's nearly the lungs I'm protecting even more than the actual muscles here. So the mask was massive. I have always traveled, especially flying, with a thing called a humidifier. And that's a mask with a very small filter at the bottom, and it's got a little kind of, I'm going to call it a moist maker. I don't know what you'd call the little film that's in it, but it keeps everything from getting dry. And the most important thing is that you do not let any of this get dry, because it'll just irritate your lungs. And when your lungs are irritated, your voice is irritated. There are these amazing sweets you can get in Germany called Ipalat. I have boxes of them. I mean, I should be sponsored by them. When you have, if you've spoken too much, if you're somewhere and it's dry, these are incredible. They're herbal, okay? And you can get them with sugar or get them without sugar if you eat as many of them as I do. I actually can keep one up here in my mouth during a performance. When you do a Wiederaufnahme, okay, you rehearse like 2-3 days. And the first time you see the set is opening night, you can be guaranteed that set has not been aired. It mightn't have seen the light of day in 6 years. It'll be covered in dust. And having something like that in your mouth will just keep everything from getting dry. It's amazing. If you travel on Deutsche Bahn, because they love a bit of heat or a bit of air conditioning, keep an E-Palat. It will make all the difference. If you're really struggling, I'm sitting at my piano. That's why these are all beside me. There's these. And so if you feel you have a little cold coming on or anything like this, there's also a little disinfectant in this that's amazing. And these are more chalky. So if you're going to bed and you'd be afraid of choking on an E-Palat, you can put one of these in your mouth, you won't choke on this. I every morning take some ginger shots. Didn't realize for years you're meant to mix them with water. I never mix them with water. I put a few on a spoon and swallow them. There's no greater disinfectant. I have an amazing ENT in Munich, and the first thing he does when he comes to the theater is offers you a shot of vodka to gargle. You're not meant to swallow it. But anything like that that will get rid of the bacteria, especially now during COVID, those things are amazing. Yeah, the ginger drops or the vodka. And you let that down here, all that bacteria will be gone. I don't have any tonsils. I got them out when I was still at school. And tonsils, of course, will catch the bacteria and save your voice. So anyone that has tonsils should seriously consider doing a daily ginger drop shot, because that will keep everything really clean. You have to drink water, at least 2 liters. As Irish people, we are born used to beautiful, moist air. And then you go anywhere else in the world and you step off the plane and that's gone. So we're spoiled when we're at home. When you go abroad, you have to drink even more water than you think. And then when you're flying or traveling, train travel especially, more water than that again. So like on a travel day, I could have 3 to 4 liters, purely because it's going to wash things out and keep the liver good. When your liver's good, your whole body's good, and that will also affect the voice. There's nothing I avoid, which you could tell if you looked at me. There's nothing I avoid eating, but right before you sing, I certainly wouldn't be having loads of milk or chocolate, but they don't have any adverse effect on your cords. Okay, just they take a little bit longer to digest. And the other thing, and this is really interesting since the COVID period, because a lot of people are speaking about throat health and lung health and all this, and people are speaking about heartburn all the time. And of course, heartburn is the singer's enemy, because if that's coming back up, that's coming under your cords and scarring them underneath. We don't want that at all. So you have to watch what you eat in the evening. And I'd be saying cut out acid from lunchtime. So it says the girl who drinks coffee up until 9 o'clock at night, but other kinds of acid like tomatoes or peppers or whatever the acid might be. I know a lot of singers won't eat an apple after lunchtime, but that doesn't affect me. So you have to find what's good and bad. But if you suffer from any sort of heartburn, honestly, if you just cut whatever that food is out in the afternoon, it will make such a difference, because heartburn will make you sound, first of all, like you've got a tired voice. But the cords are actually okay. It's just that they've had this acid popping up underneath them. So that's one other thing I'd watch out for. And when you travel, or pre-COVID again, when you travel as much as I do, you're invited a lot to dinners and things where you wouldn't be given a menu. I mean, somebody will tell you this is their local speciality, so you just must eat it, whatever it is, along with the local drink, whatever that is. And so you do take those risks. You have to. So on the back of that, you also have to have a supply of antacids and things in the bag. I'm a big believer in Andrew's salts. This makes me sound like I'm 100 years old, but anyway, which again you get in the chemist in Ireland. And I travel then with the American things called Tums, and they're like Rennies. So if you are in a situation where you think you might get heartburn, that's the one thing you've got to watch out for, because the voice does not like that. But in general, if you can keep everything moist, you're going to be in top form. So get on the E-Palat. They're brilliant, really, really brilliant. And you can only get them in Germany. I mean, I don't want to tell you the kind of money I spend on them in a season. No.
Some great tips there, Tara. And you may not know this, but your food on the plane tastes much better when you have those moisture masks on, because it's for the back of your nose and the olfactory bulb. If you keep it moist, your plain food tastes much better. A little trick I learned: straight up the nose. Keep a bit of saline solution for the before I eat my very expensive meal on the plane. Elias wants to come in with a question there as well, please.
So hello everyone, this is Elias Bemner working for the Irish Embassy in Berlin. And first of all, thank you very much for this lively talk, Tara. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I can really feel the passion in your presentation and also in your answers, and I find that inspiring. And if it's okay with you, I have two questions. Mm-hmm. And question number one is, how would you say audiences in Germany different from audiences in Ireland? So for example, if you're performing in Munich, what are the expectations? What are people like in the audience, as opposed to, let's say, if you're performing in Dublin? And the second question is, I imagine that opera is very much a collaborative effort, so it takes a lot of people to really bring everything to life, and especially bring it to life on stage. And I'm wondering, what is it like to be a member of an ensemble or a cast? Do people also hang out together, maybe in private? Do you maybe go for dinner after a rendition, or does everyone go their separate ways? And do you also feel that you have to be able to really know your fellow members on the cast, to be able to relate to them and also bring this into your stage performance? So yeah, thank you.
They're excellent questions. So I suppose the difference between the, let's say, audience expectation, between, I'll just take for the moment my experiences in Munich and in Dublin. So in Munich, obviously they're watching me since the very beginning. Okay, so they've seen both the Rough and Ready, where the theatre were giving me my first debut experiences, and then they've also seen me come back and do my 25th Barbara Seville, where I will have been in 4 or 5 other houses in between. There are expectations for sure in Munich, but there's also patience. What I enjoy very much is that they nearly want to see, has the voice changed? Has it grown? They expect me to be funny. They expect that from me now, which is great. I mean, I absolutely love that. And now as my repertoire changes slightly, I find that nerve-wracking when I'm bringing them something serious. And can they take me seriously? You know, so that's it. My growing experiences happen really there with the public, because it doesn't really matter what the management or the house thinks. I'll know straight away, because the audience, of course, as we know, can clap or they can boo. Luckily, now that has never happened to me. I've been on the stage when they booed a director, and that had me depressed for about a week. But you know, I know that can happen. It's never happened. When I come to sing in Ireland, it's a whole other thing. I would only bring something super polished and really like that I'm also ready to present, for example, at the Met. The one thing with a career like this, it's not just you that makes the sacrifice of moving abroad. It's your entire family, of course, because you're gone. You're gone. And they've spent years driving you places and watching you do things, and all of a sudden, that's all gone. And like, I knew how much it hurt my grandparents when I left. And each time I leave, it still hurts them. I can see it, but they know you have to go, because they understand that now. But it also means when you come back to sing in Ireland, then you better bring your A game and nothing less, because Ronnie, my teacher, certainly would have no problem telling you if something wasn't right or wasn't good enough or wasn't whatever. So when I come here, there's a pride, of course, in bringing something studied home, but there's also an extra kind of pressure, because I want it to be magical. I want that they're nearly needing to be picked up off the floor, because their boots have been knocked from under them. And in Munich, I have, of course, a very kind of familiar feeling and a family feeling. But I've made almost every role debut there. some role debuts where we've rehearsed for 6 weeks, which has been amazing. Others where we've rehearsed for 3 days, and I've been kind of just chancing my arm. So they know every facet of what I can do, which is beautiful. You know, it is different, but it's beautiful in that sense. When it comes to being a member of an ensemble first, so let's say like a fest ensemble in a house, that's definitely a family thing, where the pressure's 90, but it's brilliant. It's like everyone's involved in every production, and even if you're, you know, you have the main role, or you're just saying, oh, the dinner is ready, each role is important, and you can't have the opera without every role. So it's a really big kind of connected feeling when you're speaking just about a cast, especially if you do a premiere production, so you've rehearsed for 6 weeks. Whether you want to or not, you grow attached to everybody there, you know. And at the start, it was very difficult because you used to have these huge kind of intense meetings with people and all these big talks. And then the day the last show is over, that's it, they're gone. And you're all gone in your separate ways. I used to find that really difficult. Now it's no bother. And also because you're meeting the same people on the circuit, you know, at different ends of the year. It is important that you make everybody in the room feel comfortable, whatever that means. So for some people, they don't maybe want to be too socially attached, and there are other people who need that from you. So you have to read the room when you get there and see what the colleagues need to give you also the best opportunity to perform well. So you have to stay flexible. There are some people who, especially if it's a role debut, they won't want to talk after a rehearsal. They won't want to speak at all. They're going to go straight into kind of silence and saving the voice for the next day. So it all just depends on the group you're working in. Luckily for me, I've never been in the situation where I was singing with somebody I didn't like. I don't know how people, my repertoire is also quite happy repertoire. I don't really do anything too tragic. So there's generally a light mood in the room. If you're rehearsing something that's very dark, it can also get dark on you and your mind can run away with you. So it's really important that you do take a moment to have a coffee or to, you know, go for a walk with them, whatever it is, that you reset also your mind. And sometimes just for your own mental health, that's really important, you know, depending on the piece. But I'm lucky now that I'm working long enough that I really am meeting the same people on the circuit. And if there's a new person, it's kind of like, well, you've heard about them through another colleague, so you feel like you already know them or whatever. And it is, even though it's always in a different house or even in a different country, it's a familiar feeling then when you're working with somebody, you know, because it can also happen that you could end up in, I mean, for example, I'm going to Paris next February, and I mean, I don't speak any French. So I'm here with my Duolingo and my brother's leaving cert French book, trying to gather a couple of focal so I can say something. But I know the rest of the cast, or almost all of them. And there's only 2 French speakers in there. I was thinking, God, we can't be dependent on anybody there to communicate for us. So, you know, but there's already a familiar feeling knowing that I'm going there with people that I've either sung with before or have met through other colleagues. So it is, I suppose, a family feeling, even when the ensemble changes, you know, which is quite comforting then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have we any other questions? I mean, I think we could probably talk for hours.
Hello,
Hello.
can I ask a question from Dublin?
Absolutely, Monica. Yes, please.
Yeah, I want to ask Tara, you mentioned Paris just there. What are the future plans when we get out of COVID, hopefully,
Sure.
2022, 2023, so on? What are you going to be doing? Where can we see you?
Well, I mean, I've just said Paris. Obviously, legally, I'm not supposed to say where I'm going or what I'm singing because the theatres haven't announced it, but I am going to Paris for a premiere production. So that'll be amazing. I have to say, I had a contract cancelled on Saturday where I should be singing Barbara of Seville in Cologne. And that's my last standing opera contract until next February, which for me is outrageous. Usually I'd have 11 contracts a season, but everything has been cancelled. Now I do have recital work. What I can say about the continent is that they're desperately trying to decide at the moment whether they should insist from September that all artists are vaccinated or not. And that is a huge expense on any theatre. And it's also not possible. There are many, many other things in this world that you can throw money at and then fix the problem, but you can't buy the vaccine, you know, privately. So I personally don't see that as a possibility. And I think what we will see from September is there will be all of the, certainly in the German speaking countries, will do productions with their predominant fest singers, so they're full-time singers. And there'll be no more dovetailing of contracts. So although the contracts will come back, we're already having to commit to quarantine 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after each project. Which means that although we will work less, of course. I certainly should be spending most of the fall back at the Met. I had 2 productions, but they're already both gone. But I do believe the Germans are really flying along and really, really fighting hard. Of course, state by state, it's different. And the rules are different in each state. But I think for sure, Munich, that gets a new administration this year. I know they're making their season announcements at the end of next month. So that should be interesting. I'm not in it, but that should be interesting. When it comes to performances in Ireland, again, things are very flexible here at the moment. And on a European standing, things look rather positive for the vaccine in comparison. But certainly what we were told as an opera company was that from the autumn, they'd like to envisage 50 people in a theatre. But they're also saying that you can have 50 people in the audience, but only 50 people on stage. Well, we had planned things like, presume I can say this, we had planned things like Onegin. Well, there's more than 50 in the cast with the chorus, and there's nearly 50 people in the orchestra. So certain things like that, we're still going to have to replan and redo. I personally don't know yet what my next season will look like. Yet I can tell you where I'll sing in 24, 25. The industry books so far in advance that COVID, just in a sense of planning, has made such a mess because the industry doesn't know how to plan only 6 weeks or 6 months in advance. But I certainly will appear back in Berlin next season. I do know that. And I, all going well, should also sing in Dublin in May of next season. So not this May, yeah, the following May. But it's still all up in the air. For us, we're considering that season 22-23 will be the first normal season back, because by then hopefully everyone will be vaccinated. So yeah, that's about all I know.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? Just check if there's any hands.
Just a small one. Sorry, Thomas, just a small one, Tara. Thanks very much. Very, very interesting. I'm just wondering, is there a certain character type that is common to all opera singers? Like, I mean, you have to have dominance, presence, you have to fill the room. Is there a type of general character mold?
It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. I mean, in Munich alone, right, there are 3 Irish singers at the minute, and there's no question that people expect massive storytelling ability, right, from the 3 of us. But there are also singers, for example, Anya Harteros, who is amazingly quiet and such a still person, and can really, has no problem just kind of closing the world out and concentrating. But it's 50-50. You're either that very calm person or you're loud and I don't want to say overbearing, but certainly you could fill any social space with very little problem. But there are many singers that in their private life are so quiet and they expend all of it on stage because they're not playing themselves. And there are certain people who go out on stage and are elated to play somebody else and let out all of this kind of hidden stuff that they don't have in their own personal life. And then you meet them socially and you think, oh my God, what happened? You know, but it's 50-50. And you know, realistically, anybody that's willing to commit to a character, I think, can be in the opera. Where you fall into problems then is when you do recitals. Like if you cannot fill the room, if you cannot color things up and be in a storytelling mode all the time, that's when those other characters suffer a little bit, because it's nearly kills them. Because when you do a recital, you're going out with your own color palette and your own life experience and not playing a character. And so it's a much more vulnerable situation to be in. And that's when the personality really does make a big difference. Also in how taxing the evening is on you and your nerves and your person, really. But I don't think there's anybody who couldn't be a singer. I mean, you can't. It would be very sad if there was an amazing instrument given to somebody who didn't want to share it. But if you want to share it and you want to put something across, the personality will come on the voice. So it's yeah. It's a really, I haven't thought about it before. It's an interesting question, but I think for the most part, it doesn't hurt, to have a bit of outgoing energy, because the good days are amazing and the hard days can be super hard. So you need to want to be on the stage, you need to want to be sharing something, and you need to have the ability to be able to do that. So I think that's probably the best way to answer that.
Thank you. So it's good to know it's not supercharged A types.
No.
Shared a small space. Thank you.
No bother.
I'm conscious that people probably want to go on, but we could still talk for ages. And I want to ask you one more question, and maybe others have a question, but seeing as we're both from Dundalk, hey, yeah, and it's just what the question Declan asked there as well. You probably know the story from 1963 about Pavarotti coming to sing in Dundalk, right?
Love it.
With the he was all awkward and his hands were everywhere, and people were saying you're a great singer, and it was Monsignor Shields who said to him, do something with your hands, and he says, I don't know what to do with my hands, and he says, do you have a hanky? And he says, yeah, and he says, but hold the hanky when you're singing. And I've had that. Maybe your teacher Geraldine was there that night, but I know some people who were, and they confirmed, yeah, that is exactly what happened. And so
amazingly, for sure, amazingly, the Monsignor was also a big part of my singing when I was growing up in Dundalk, and he had access to the Vatican Library.
Yeah.
So there was all sorts of scores that you couldn't get anymore. And we could just ask him, and he'd go and he would translate it for me then, because he had spent such an amount of time in Italy. He would do the translations, and he was such an opera fan. He had a beautiful way also of explaining the stories. I mean, he didn't sugarcoat anything. I can remember once or twice my parents being horrified by the language he was using to explain the things to me. But he had all these old LPs, and he could get the scores from Rome, which were amazing. And also Ricordi have some agreement with the Vatican that anything that gets any new edition of anything, they get a copy of. So it meant then that I was getting all these albums and these new scores that nobody had yet, because the Monsignor was able to get them. I mean, he was incredible, and he was so invested in the young singers and in the kind of legacy of opera, not just in Dundalk, all over Ireland. But, you know, he didn't mind whether you were the best singer or not the best singer. If you were interested at all, he'd spend that time with you and he'd tell you all the stories. And I mean, it was an incredible, we were so lucky that he was still alive and willing to do it also, while he still had parish work and other things to do, you know? Yeah. So, no, an amazing story. I love that.
Yeah, and then coming from that, did he give you a lucky charm? Do you have a lucky charm that you have to bring on the stage with you, hidden under your dress or in your pants, or secreted away in your hairpiece, or what?
God bless him. I have like a little relic, but I it's in the jewelry box. I don't take it on the stage with me for fear I'd lose it. But I have it all the time. Yeah. Bless him.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Is there anybody else with a hand up or a question? We have a video clip of Tara singing at the Orfa Phelan produced Cinderella. So we might play it, and if you can bear with us on hopefully the quality of the recording is going to portray itself as we do it in this online event. But Elias, if you could press play maybe, or is it Tara we're asking to press play? Who's got it?
Not me.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
I can do it. Question is, how long do you want this clip to play, Tara? Maybe
I mean, we could just leave it at this. You could let people watch it or leave if they like.
Well, you know what we should do? Maybe, you know what we should do? Is maybe just send the link to everybody in the chat
That's
as to where you
perfect.
can find it on YouTube.
Brilliant.
And you will find other clips of Tara singing in various different guises as well. And they're a real treat. And it's great that we are able to enjoy this. I mean, when you think back to when these were written, when you talk about Cork, when you talk about Dublin, in all those hundreds of years ago, and there were real places where people could go and enjoy opera. I mean, it's such, it is a miracle really how we can all have music at our fingertips in a lot of ways. And as you say as well, Tara, it's great, but it's also kind of it's a double-edged sword as well for you, because people will be like, well, you know, why would I go to the opera? But it's getting to see the performances. And I hadn't realized until I was studying you there that you really have to act, and there's real drive and there's real performance, and it's not just the singing, and it's really moving and it's conveying the emotions. And as you said, this giving people a hug and doing that for your grandparents. And I'm really glad that you have that talent and that you're expressing it in the way that you do. So I want to thank you
very much
for sharing your skill set with us and for developing it the way that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd also just like to say really briefly, so that people on the call can hear it even. I've been very lucky always to have good relationships with the embassies wherever I go. Obviously, I've had to lean quite heavily on the embassy in Berlin because I've been in Germany for such a long time. And not only when we launched Irish National Opera and we did our European launch in the embassy in Berlin, but I mean, I'm on their backs all the time, sometimes for very important things and sometimes for things that probably aren't important at all. And it's incredible the work that goes on behind the scenes. Even last week, I had poor Thomas in a sweat. I was terrified I wouldn't be able to get back into the country and all the things we were trying to organize. So I'd also like to say thank you very much for the support you give. I'm very aware, not just to me. And I hope they're not all as annoying as I am, but it's massively comforting to the rest of us then that are trying to work abroad, that we have such a support network as yourselves that are always there. And it's a really comforting thing to have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tara. You, like every other Irish citizen and friends of Ireland, you're very welcome, and we're there to support you. Now, just one final thing to say thank you to you. Normally we give a gift, and for you, you're the lucky winner this month of a lovely hand knitted tea warmer, tea cozy. With unfortunately we don't have a picture of it. I don't know, maybe Elias, you might have a picture there you could show up, but it will be winging its way to you once the restrictions are over. We'll get it to you. So
thank you very much.
It'll keep your ginger shots that you're supposed to dilute. Keep them warm for you. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara. It was fantastic. From Ireland.
Thank you. Oh, I can see. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.